What if the hospitality industry wasn't toxic? What if the kitchens we built were defined not by exhaustion, burnout, and extreme sacrifice, but by joy, by connection, and by balance? For most of my life, I was told that this industry was supposed to hurt, that greatness was only measured by how much you could endure, how many double shifts you could work without eating, how many weekends and holidays you were willing to sacrifice, how many times you would get screamed at and have to take it like a champ, how much of yourself you were willing to sacrifice for love of the craft. And the real chefs, they said, well, those were the ones that wore their exhaustion like a badge of honor. So when I stepped into this work as my second career, someone who was not in their 20s, but perhaps let's call it a little more seasoned, as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, with a full life already fully established, I was expecting turbulence. But what I wasn't prepared for was this sentence: don't muddy the waters. As if my motherhood, my boundaries, my passion would pollute an industry already drowning in burnout. As if asking for balance and an honest chance at success somehow made me unfit to belong. But instead of discouraging me, those words lit something pretty fierce inside of me. I started to ask, what if the waters needed to be muddied? What if they needed a really good stirring? What if change only happens when something comes along to disrupt it? What if starting later in life wasn't a limitation, but actually this really beautiful blessing? The moment I started phrasing the questions that way, everything changed. And that became the foundation of what came next. At Distinctive Ideas, we've built a different kind of kitchen. One where mothers, grandmothers, and caregivers, people who have spent their entire adult lives nurturing other people, can now come to work and be nurtured themselves. Where showing up as your full, imperfect self isn't something to hide, it's something to be celebrated. A place where tucking your kids in at night matters. Where picking up your grandchildren after school matters. Where caring for your aging parents isn't something to apologize for, but something that's going to require support. For so long, this industry told us that our worth was defined by our availability. That if we weren't always hustling, always grinding, we weren't actually dedicated enough. I beg to differ. When you honor people's lives, they show up more present, more creative, more alive. We built this company to prove that compassion and excellence can live in the same kitchen, that hospitality can actually feel hospitable, not just to our guests, but to the people who are putting on the experience. We learned very quickly that when you center people over performance, everything changes. Loyalty grows, innovation flourishes. Our team felt safe, and when people feel safe, I tell you, they shine. There's another lie that this industry tells us, that your worth is measured in how much revenue you can make in a room full of people, how many tables you can turn, how many bodies you can move through a dining room. Now, don't get me wrong, the point of business is to do all that. That's obvious. But the most meaningful parts of hospitality are not visible on a spreadsheet. You cannot put a price on an experience that pulls someone back into their life, on a meal that slows someone down long enough to feel joy again, on a moment where strangers become friends, or a dish that reconnects someone with their childhood, their culture, their sense of belonging. Those moments can't be priced. They're invaluable. Those moments are actually the soul of this work. Our worth is not how much revenue we can generate, but how much humanity we can return to the room. Everything that we curate at Distinctive Ideas is rooted in love, and that love starts well before we turn on the ovens. It starts with our farmers, the ones who are harvesting vegetables for us at the beginning of the day. With the cheesemakers patiently transforming milk into something that tastes like the land that it came from. With the gardeners down the road tending herbs in the greenhouse. With the dairy families delivering milk in the snow like today. It begins with the cattle herders who walk the fields each morning, checking on every single calf with a tenderness most of us will never see, ensuring that they're healthy, safe, thriving, well before the day even begins. When we buy from them, we're not just buying ingredients. We are investing in people, their dreams, their families, their ability to continue the work that they love, and their stories show up on our plates. A tomato isn't just a tomato, it's July in Bloomfield. The honey in our vinaigrette tastes like the fields surrounding the farm. The eggs we use come from hens my children know by name. That is the true meaning of farm to table. It's not just proximity, it's reciprocity. Food that feeds the community, that in turn feeds us. Our dining style isn't just about what's on the plate. It's about what happens around it. At our dinners, strangers sit side by side. And by dessert, they're laughing, sharing stories, finding common ground they didn't even know existed. I carry my own story in every dish I make. I am a proud immigrant, raised by parents who built a new community from the ground up, where friends became lifelines, aunties were made instead of born, and traditions were recreated out of necessity and love. Those flavors, the ones that come from my culture and from the families that became my family, are woven in my food. Recipes that are slow, intentional, nurturing, that remind me of happy times and the unending support in the tough ones. Food that demands your attention and rewards patience. Food that requires your presence. But unfortunately, I entered an industry that is obsessed with fast and cheap. I mean, we are talking turning tables over, speeding through service, takeout lines as far as the eye can see. All the food stripped of story and soul. Made me ask, what if nourishment was never meant to be rushed? What if a meal could bring someone back to themselves, back to each other, back to something real? Because that is the power of the table, where the world feels smaller and connection feels bigger. It's a place my little family gathers every night, no matter how hectic it is, just so that I can feed my kids and listen to their stories from the day. Hospitality at its best is not about performance. It's about care. It's about the radical act of saying, you belong. I did not build this vision alone. My mother stands with me in this work, honoring the generations that came before and the ones watching us work together now. She's the woman who taught me resilience, joy, generosity, and the art of making magic out of nothing. It is also her story that is rolled up into our food. Her eye rolling, her laughter, her wisdom. It's woven into everything we create. And when my children see us, 3 generations in the kitchen, I hope they learn that success does not require you losing yourself. That work can look like love. That family and career can grow side by side. And we do it with this team, our extraordinary team, a combination of people bringing their own pieces and stories to our kitchens. This proves every day that when you build a business rooted in care, you're not just serving food, you're building a movement. So what if the hospitality industry wasn't toxic? What if it became a model for humanity? Imagine an industry where success is not defined by who works the hardest, but by who can create the most meaningful impact. Where leadership looks like mentorship, not intimidation. Where mental health is not taboo. Where competition is replaced with camaraderie and time off isn't a betrayal. Where kitchens build people up instead of break them down. What if we built that? Perhaps teams would stay together longer. Creativity would expand. The food would absolutely taste better because food reflects the heart that made it. Our greatest strength is not efficiency, it's humanity. So yeah, what if? What if we believed that hospitality could heal instead of harm? What if we reimagined an industry rooted not in burnout, but in balance, compassion, and real connection? At Distinctive Ideas, we choose every day to live that answer. Not because it's easy, because trust me, anything worth it is never easy. But we are slowly proving that when you put love on the plate, respect in the schedule, and purpose in the work, you're not just changing dinner. You're slowly changing people, which then changes communities. You can change what the face of this industry looks like. And I hope one day to change the world. Thank you.